We all spend a lot of time thinking about the technologies that go into our machining businesses, whether that's CNC machines, whether that's CAD CAM systems, or whether that's tooling and work holding. But there's a piece of machining technology that you may have been neglecting. What's up, guys? Ian Sandusky from Lakewood Machine and Tool back here again for Practical Machinist. And today we're going to be diving into the wild world of ERP systems, or Enterprise Resource Planning Systems. Today's episode of Machine Shop Talk is going to be a little bit different and a little bit special. You'll see here what I mean here in a second. But before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. Let's get into it. Okay guys, so as promised, this is going to be a little bit of a special episode of Machine Shop Talk, a little bit different than we normally do it. ERPs are something that I've thought about a lot. They come up as a topic a lot on the forums, and in some of the recent videos that we've put up, you guys have been mentioning them and asking about them. From my perspective, for those of you who don't know, an ERP system is a piece of software that you can put on your floor. They're commonly referred to as shop management systems or shop resource planning systems. They're a tool that help you manage your machining business from the back end. And some of these can actually do the entire back end. So while I've been interested and done a lot of reading on these kind of softwares, I have been very hesitant and reluctant to get involved with them because I find them intimidating. I've been a little bit scared of them because there's the setup, there's the overwhelm with getting them actually implemented. There's the matter of trying to get people on board. But today, this is actually going to be a bit of a special episode because we have a guy who has literally used these systems for decades. We're going to get the chance to talk and bounce some of my concerns and some of the concerns that we pulled from you guys in the previous weeks, from the community when we've been asking your opinions and thoughts on ERP systems. Today, I'm gonna be joined by Andy from Tri-K Machining. Andy is a very, very knowledgeable fellow. We're gonna get to talk about things like how he implemented them. He's put these in at a couple of companies that he's been with over the years. So he has a lot of experience with that. We're gonna hopefully address some of the concerns with, getting everybody onto the same page with using them, and some of the benefits and drawbacks he's found over the years to using them. Andy has put ECI Shop Solutions JobBOSS² into his current shop, so I'm really looking forward to talking to him about that. And then after, we're gonna be getting the chance to talk with Brian from ECI Shop Solutions about JobBOSS², just to kind of bounce some further questions off him and maybe get a little bit of clarification in case we need some. If you guys have any questions or comments about this as it goes, please, please, please leave them in the comments below. So I would love to know your thoughts and opinions and questions as this goes in the comments below. Okay, let's go see Andy. Thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure. A pleasure to be with you.
Now, you're a guy who has worked with ERP. You've worked in the machining business for a long time. Why don't you kind of give us a little bit of background on your story and how you got involved with Tri-K?
Okay, sure. Sounds great. So I joined Tri-K back in 2013. I was part of a sister company that we were side by side, had one common owner between the two, that went back into the early or mid 1990s. And so we shared a lot of synergies. They had a great quality lab, so I could come over and use a lot of their things. I had a lot of CAD. My background's a lot into engineering, so we could pick up some of that as well. And but through it, they also knew my experience with some ERP systems that I had in the past. So they would always show me or kick ideas around me. Just what do you guys think about these kind of things that went on to get into there? Here at Tri-K, there's about 30. We've got about 30 employees. We're in two buildings. Our buildings are separated by about a city block. We have all CNC equipment, with the exception of our tool shop, but horizontal mills, vertical mills, lathes with a lot of live tooling, those kind of things. And then we have a saw shop, which is in our other building as well.
So if you had to qualify what Tri-K does, do you guys focus more on production machining? Are you more prototype? Where do you kind of lean in that regard?
We are a production shop. Do a lot with cast, do a lot with just steel, do a lot with outside services and heat treating, some exotic heat treating things going on, painting, plating, those kind of things as well, which are sort of key reasons why ERP as well. It was there's lead times associated, there's costs. How do we capture it? Those are some key things into that side and why we would utilize things like that level.
Can you describe kind of the situation that was going on at Tri-K that ultimately turned your heads towards working with an ERP system and settling on JobBOSS², I believe you're using from ECI? What kind of were the main struggles that you guys were aiming to solve?
We needed to be able to make sure that we were capturing cost, make sure that we were making purchases. Are we purchasing to inventory or are we purchasing directly to jobs? And then be able to track through shipments that went out as well. But there was no doubt that to be able to schedule was a big problem that we were having. And that I think the ability to be able to do a schedule later on was probably one of the key things that drove us and said, okay, we need to, but ultimately total shop control was a key instrument into that side.
And just to kind of highlight one thing that you've said a couple times is capturing costs. Can you explain what that means to people who may not be familiar with that kind of lexicon?
Yeah, absolutely. So at some point, we applied to this job or maybe to this part that we just made. We applied material to it. So we issued it out of inventory. We moved it from an inventory account to a work in process and strictly to that job, or even just capturing labor, because somebody might be working on this job all this day or part of this day. And how do we grab that time that they spent and attribute it straight to that job so that ultimately when we ship that out the door, we know what it cost us to make that part. Were we in the end, were we profitable? Weren't we profitable? Did we do a good job when we quoted the part? Did we do a good job and stay in our efficiencies when we ran the part? So a lot of those things come into play to why we want to be able to capture those costs along the way. Outside services, we touched on that as well in the beginning, because that's one of the other ones. It's where does that dollar go to? It's real easy. Okay, we sent it out to get painted and we paid the bill, but it's like, but what? Okay, what was it that we used that on? Well, it was that one part number, and it went to that customer, and they paid us this much. And did we get paid enough to cover that cost as well?
Yeah, as a guy who does use a lot of outside services for plating and all that kind of things, I know that struggle very well. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And trying to keep all that paperwork without a system in place is a struggle, right? Yeah, right. Yeah. Your reaction says it all.
I've been there and I know how painful it can be. The reasons for putting in JobBOSS², I mean, they all make a lot of sense. But, we've gone out, we've talked to a lot of the people in the community, and one of the biggest hesitations is the setup phase. These things, it's not always just you install a software and boom, you're good. What kind of expectations did you guys have about the setup phase, and, which were kind of proven correct and which were kind of just worries you had that didn't come to fruition?
Yeah. So I've spoken to some of the people that were really integral to that when we first put it in before I did it, because there's a few things that you have to outline in the very beginning. You need to understand what your costing structure is. Are you a standard or an actual cost environment? So there's a lot of accounting things that are getting put in. What are your calendars going to be? What are your work centers? How am I going to define them? How do I want to dispatch work or utilize the work centers as I apply to it? All those things you really have to know ahead of time, really have a good grasp of what it is that are important factors to us to how we want to be able to set that up into there.
So a little bit of foresight and a little bit of planning before just jumping on it really does help.
Yeah, that's right. And I always recommend it's one of those things. I know that there's a couple schools of thoughts about it too. Take some training beforehand. Before you even get to that point where you're ready to do the implementation, take the training just so that you're versed in that. So when you open it up, you're just like, where's what? and you already know where it's all at. Now you're asking those deeper questions into that one. Or if you contract that out, a lot of people do. It's like they'll hire JobBOSS² to come in, help us get it set up. And that's great. And when they do, make sure you know why they're doing what they're doing. Ask those questions a little bit deeper as it goes, just so that you're an understanding at the very least of what they're doing. So, because later on, you're going to decide to do something different. And it's like, why is it here? What ramifications are going to happen if I change that or things like that? So become as best versed as you can from that ahead of time. And I think that'll aid in your implementation side.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And because we know that these things don't happen in a vacuum, people are people are not machines. When it comes to putting an ERP and specifically JobBOSS² on the floor, what were the biggest company culture changes that had to happen? Was it getting people to actually use the system? What kind of things did you guys have to do, or what kind of changes had to happen on a people level when you put this in?
There was a lot. We did have a lot of, especially in our management shop personnel, didn't understand the benefit. In fact, felt it was more of a burden on them to be putting that information in, because all I'm doing is I got to get this job done today, and I'm getting ready to do the next one, and we're going to go on from that side. And so many people in that level just weren't versed with the benefits that came from having a system into place and how that can benefit them in their work. And so that was absolutely, to get that buy-in was a struggle with people, even to the point that even as we've had people leave saying there's no way it's going to work, and it's working, and it's like not even recognizing at this point to what's gone on with that one, right? And so that becomes a little bit of a trouble into that one. And the other one is that prior to having a total system in, everybody was just accustomed to, I've got my little piece of the pie. So I've got my own spreadsheets. I know exactly where they're at. I know what they're telling me. I know what I got to fill out. All that information is right there, and I'll just keep going along that path to put that in. But I'm not so worried about the putting it into the system the same way, or maybe I'll put just enough in there, but I won't give you enough information into it that becomes beneficial to others later on down the side. But yeah, that was probably just recognition that there's something in, and we got to do something different. And it seems like everybody's always busy, and it's like, and you want me to do some additional work as well, and it's like, please look at that as an investment in your time to only make your life easier down the road.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And, because obviously it is a difficult thing to get on board. It can be difficult to get on board and get people to buy in. Obviously, since it's working out, there are obviously some big benefits to using the system you got in place. So if you had to go and double click on a couple of the biggest strengths that using JobBOSS² has given you, what would you say those are? Either one or two things that without using this software, you just wouldn't have those capabilities, or you wouldn't have those strengths.
I'm going to probably let me start with one of my least ones, but I don't want to get lost with it, right? So we are sent new parts all the time to quote. And a lot of times there are some pretty big quantities. And the big question that we end up with is, okay, what impact is that going to have on our work capacity on our shop floor? And so the steps, just some of the simple steps of, well, okay, in the very beginning, we're gonna make an estimate. And that estimate's going to include what work centers are we going to run this on, what run times are we going to need, how much setup time are we going to need, what materials, what outside services, what steps is it going to flow, all those things. Even to the point that we've got all these efficiencies now attributed to our work centers as well, which we really can fine tune into that level. And when we get that all done, now we're going to do this with some new parts. And so we create some new estimates for these. And and our current workload looks like this. And this customer's telling us that we're bringing 100,000 parts of this coming in next year to you guys, and this much, and it's like, what work centers are going to become now overburdened, and what are we going to have to do? What additional shifts are we going to have to create? Do we need to be really serious about making some new machine acquisitions, which don't happen overnight, of course, and be able to plan ahead. So the what ifs, what's going to happen to us into that down the road, has really been a huge strength to us into that side. Our biggest is more of just of a very generic one, and that is we have total control of the company with it. So we know what's coming, we know what's got to be done, we know where we're going to have a hiccup, or where things need to be addressed, or those kind of things beyond even our owners are accountants. But that total control for sure is a strength. We see all the steps to what it takes to get it out the door, and we see all the strengths, all the little pieces of pie that come into there. I mean, it's our person who does customer service, and the customer's calling and screaming at us, and they're like, where are my parts at? And their first call's not out to the floor to ask where it's at. Their first thing is they're clicking in the system, and it says, I see it's running here. So she's able to, at this point, to be able to give accurate information back to the customer instantly.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like, don't let me misquote you here or put words in your mouth, but it really sounds like one of the strengths that you're kind of highlighting is that it takes the opinions out of it. It takes the emotion out of it. It's not how you feel things are going on the floor. You know how things are going on the floor. It's not how long you feel something's going to take. You know how long barring acts of God, but you know how long something's going to take. So it takes that kind of emotional, I don't want to call it emotional, but that kind of thought process out of it. So now you're working with the concrete data.
Ian, that's a great analogy into there. So one of the ones that I'll have a discussion with our production manager in the mornings, and it's like, okay, well, this machine's about to go down on a job that we're running. And then their reply back is, yeah, I see they got a half a box or whatever it is. And I'm like, no, I'm looking right at the schedule. I say they got 4.23 hours remaining on this job. First break, they're going to be done. What are we running next? I don't care about that half a box and all that. Great analogy to what we've got going on. The precision to that is just amazing. And how accurate that hits all the time, it just proves itself.
Because it's not just speculation, you're telling me. It's not the machine speculating, the system speculating. You're finding it's accurate and reliable. And I mean, just hearing some of these things from the perspective of for those who don't know, I have a very small shop. Hearing things like there can be $10,000 sitting on the floor for a long period of time. That's obviously very anxiety inducing, but a lot of smaller shops may be like, I see those every day. I don't know how it would be there. And a lot of these kind of conversations relate back to the fact that a lot of small shop owners struggle with putting themselves in the shoes of someone who could successfully implement, JobBOSS² or E2. What would you say, as a guy who's been for some very smaller shops, like you said, you're in a place with 15 guys up to where you are now, what would you say to these guys who are hesitant to put something like JobBOSS² on the floor because they are so small?
Well, I think about that, and I try to put myself back in shoes into that level, because my first inkling is always like, how do you survive without having one in place? And I think more importantly, it's because we think a little bit more about what are the rules, what are the things that we are currently doing to get the job done. But if I can put a fraction of that effort into putting it into a system, now I've just freed myself up with a little bit more time, and I've made sure that I've covered all the bases as we've got to that level. And from that, what I'll start to expand on is going to be, okay, now I see that I have more time to maybe focus on some other things that we don't do now because we just don't have time to get it done. And maybe we can start to look at some of those other additional things that are playing into that one. Having all that data at your fingertips and at your disposal for everything becomes key. And I even in the case, I mean, we were there were four of us at one. It wasn't a machine shop, but we were a manufacturer. We put 150 parts into a tool, and we built tools and shipped tools all day long. And how do you and always had one place to go and go here. I can find out where that stands.
Essentially, it gives you a feedback loop that you may not have had before, even if you are a small shop. It gives you the ability to review your data, because a lot of the concern is, I'm 3 guys, I'm 5 guys, I'm whatever at my shop. Why do I need the organization side of it? And essentially, maybe you don't right away, but there are other benefits to it. An ERP system can really help catalyze growth. Do you feel that implementing one earlier than you need it is beneficial, or do you think people should wait until they hit a threshold before they implement them?
Being able to congregate everything together and pull it together to take advantage of it from that perspective makes it real simple to save time and for that area of growth. And it's one of those, I would you can be very limited in your tasks. When I came to Tri-K, I was floored when I would see how many people got involved to find out if we were going to be able to ship that part out today. Mm-hmm. We didn't have a good system for stocking, so somebody's scouring the shelves to see if we got the parts in house. It's like, don't have enough, and now we're working backwards to all the work centers that it goes to.
Oh, someone might have one over on his table over there. Yeah.
Right. And they start working it back and where it's at. And when you really think about that, it's like, so think about all the manpower it took to be able to figure all of those steps that got missed right along the way. Whereas opposed to if I just had one place to go and I can see it immediately, then I just saved all those other ones. And I think that's what really can open you up for a lot of things that take place into that ability to grow into that side.
And real quick, because we got time for one last quick question here, but as a guy who has worked with a lot of MRPs and ERPs, what made you settle on JobBOSS² from ECI for this? What really drew you to it? Because you have lots of options, you've used lots of options. What made you settle on this?
We wanted to happen quickly, and so that was a key thing that we struggled with that initial cost. And then what happens is now our server becomes outdated, and now our IT company's telling us, "Hey, you're gonna have to buy a new server." And we're like, "Wait a minute! I'd rather go buy a new machine than I would go buy another server." And that's one of the things that's become even more of a godsend is the fact that it's cloud-based now, and so I get the speed because it's on the cloud. I'm not worried. All I need now is internet connectivity, and we're on. And if I lose it at this building, we do it from home, or we do it down at McDonald's, or we do something somewhere else where we can now have internet access and we see it.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all your experience with us today. This has been very, very illuminating. As a guy who has worked with these for a very long time, speaking to a guy who has not worked with them at all, and answered a lot of questions I had, and I hope it answered a lot of questions from the community that we polled. So this was fantastic. Andy, thank you very much for your time today. Where can we find you guys online at Tri-K?
I appreciate that so much. So online, our best is through our website at www.tri-k.net, trik.net.
Okay, guys, I'm here with Brian from ECI. Brian, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for having me.
And what do you do over there at ECI?
So I am the Director of Sales Engineering and Solutions. So I am involved in any new customer that might be interested in coming on board here at ECI. I help implement those customers.
Now, we just talked to Andy from Tri-K, who is a customer of JobBOSS². One thing we were really talking about that was interesting is they are a little bit of a larger company. I think you said they have about 75 people there. And I heard his take on it, but I'd like to hear kind of what you would say as well. One of the main hesitations that I hear a lot, and I have myself, is as a small shop, it can seem really intimidating and difficult to want to implement an ERP system or JobBOSS². What would you say to guys who have these smaller shops that are hesitant towards putting in a system?
Yeah, and I get the hesitation, right? So we're a small company. We've got a lot of stuff happening. A lot of people are busy. I just don't have the time to implement an ERP, right? And if I do, what kind of challenges am I faced with? Well, first off, what I recommend is for smaller companies to just take a look and determine whether or not you have a pulse on your business, right? So are you able to, at a glance, understand what's coming into the business, what's going out of the business, and how efficiently you're operating? If you are unable to do that at a glance, quick click, right, then you may want to consider an ERP. Now, with JobBOSS², the implementation process is fairly simple and easy. JobBOSS² is a cloud-based solution. So you're utilizing web browser interfaces to access it. It's not like you got to download all this software and worry about machines and all this other stuff. And in regards to the actual implementation piece, my recommendation is to be prepared. Do your homework. Understand where the areas of your business you might be weak in, and do a little bit more additional deep dive to understand what exactly you're expecting to get out of that piece of the business, whether it be the financials or the shop floor, or whether it's just overall quoting and sales orders. And from that point, engage with an ERP. And we have folks on board, our team, we have experts in this industry that can help bridge that gap for you. So some of the sweat that might come off the brow in the fact that you're entrusting your company with folks from, in our case, ECI, that are going to help guide you through this process.
In talking with Andy, it was interesting because I asked him, what were some of the main problems you were trying to solve? And one of the things he brought up was that he didn't even realize that some of the problems were there to solve until he started using the software. What are some of the things that people may not even be aware are either capabilities of the software, or what are some problems people may not even be aware that they can solve when using something like JobBOSS²?
Yeah, so great question. In most ERPs, there is a tremendous amount of features and functionality. And what happens is we get very uber focused in a couple of aspects of that software and completely forget about what it can do. I'll just use, for example, quality. Quality kind of hides below the line in the fact that, if I'm a custom shop and I've just got one order that I need to work on for the next 3 or 4 months, quality is not necessarily a big concern for me until I get to the end of the project, or if I'm doing spot checking or whatever. But the idea is JobBOSS² isn't just for custom shops, and it has a fairly decent quality module in it. Now, we provide resources to help individuals not only turn these functions on, but also to train them in how to utilize those functions to make sure that you are able to what I would call adopt.
So kind of what I'm hearing here, and again, don't let me put words in your mouth, is that you can put the software in. That doesn't mean you need to utilize everything right away, because it can be intimidating, especially when I'm trying to think. I run most of my stuff off, QuickBooks and Excel. So when I think about having to put in all this functionality, I think great. But then I got 10 other things to monitor. So if I'm hearing this correctly, I can put it in and I can only use part of it if that's what I need to use to start, and then start adding functionality.
That is correct. Some ERPs are sold modularly, so you would purchase modules based on what your needs are. In this specific case for JobBOSS², it's a full suite. But the fact is that you don't necessarily have to use every single option. So yes, focus on what the immediate needs of the business are. Just know that the ERP has additional functionality. And usually during the pre-sales process, we would review these for you. Just an important item for your subscriber base is when you're doing what we call the discovery call, make sure that you're speaking of your immediate business needs, so that the team that's working with you will be able to show and utilize and demonstrate and basically put you in the driver's seat on the items that are affecting your business right away.
What's your favorite story of a small shop adopting something like JobBOSS? Do you have anything that comes to mind of a story that just completely turned it around once they brought it in, especially if they were maybe a little hesitant to start?
Yeah, so actually quite a few customers come to the table hesitant. And what we get in feedback, a specific example is, well, I've got this problem. I have no idea what my profitability is. I am bringing in these custom jobs. I'm barely making it. Sometimes I wonder if I'm even making it. And, what can you do to help us understand where I'm profitable and where I'm not? And after, the implementation, usually within 3 to 4 months, we're getting those calls back saying, thank you so much for helping us. It turns out that we had a bunch of waste out on the shop floor that we weren't even accounting for, and all that stuff's piling up and we're losing it in inventory. And honestly, that moment is different for each specific customer. It may be inventory, it may be shop floor efficiency, it may be machine intelligence, and why is my machine running and not running? And oh my goodness, that machine's not running. It should be running right now. So the moment is different from each. I've got a lot of stories to tell, but keeping it simple. And then the other thing I want to share, Ian, is don't be afraid of the implementation. We can absolutely help you in a phased approach. So again, telling us your priorities, we can help structure that during the implementation.
It's interesting to hear that once the emotion and the thought process is taken out of the business, that the software allows you to actually quantify the data. You may find out that if you think you're a job shop, you might find out on paper, we're actually a prototype shop. That's where we make our money, and we're losing money every time we do this. But because in your head, you're so obsessed with, no, we need production. No, guess what? You've been losing money on production every single time. That's a really interesting concept that I kind of got from Andy as well. And really understanding your business better by putting it in sounds like a very attractive feature.
Oh my gosh, you nailed it, Ian. Yep.
So there you have it, guys. Thank you very much to Andy from TriK and Brian from ECI for stopping in and chatting with us. I found this to be illuminating, to say the least. I had some very, as you probably had noted, some preconceptions about shop software, about ERP systems, and getting to hear from somebody who uses this every day and has faced some of these challenges was very, very helpful. A lot of my concerns about setup, a lot of my concerns about feeling overwhelmed about implementing something like this and having just the paralysis of too many options and too much choice. I feel like I got some good answers that helped kind of center my thinking on a little bit. Hopefully you guys have as well. In the comments below, guys, make sure you guys hop on and let me know if I miss any questions, because this may come up again. Let me know your thoughts and the softwares you guys are using, and some of the strengths you guys are finding out of them, and some of the things you wish they did a little bit better. Guys, people read these comments. Something you say here could end up being a feature tomorrow. So make sure you guys let us know in the comments below if you found this valuable, things you wish we had touched on, and so on and so forth. In any case, guys, thanks again to Andy from TriK and Brian from ECI Shop Solutions for stopping by and giving us a hand. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications below to make sure you never miss a video. You take care.